All right, everybody, we're going to get started. Want to do a little bit of a quick introduction here and introduce Mudge and the people that have gone actually through the fast track program. And for me, this is something that's been awesome for the community in itself and really starting to change a lot of the things that we do in security. So, growing up, in the security industry and everything that Mudge has done in the past, it's kind of weird being on stage with him actually. A little nervous, but seriously. Everything that DARPA's been doing with the initiative and the ability to fund certain projects like this has been amazing. So, keep your attention on this. We're going to go through a bunch of different things about the Cyber Fast Track program and what it is and what it's been doing. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mudge.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Some of you probably remember me from a long time ago and some of the various things that we've done as were just mentioned. One of the cool things about still being in this field is that there are a lot of young new faces who probably don't know any of that, which is great as well, because we always want new blood into these sorts of situations. And then some of you probably have seen something to do with Cyber Fast Track or some of the stuff that I'm doing at DARPA. Cyber Fast Track is one of 8 of the programs I run at DARPA. And that's actually probably more than I probably should be running, but I've been a victim of my own success. So what I figured is that since a lot of folks have probably seen, like a kind of either a CFT town hall or one of my earlier presentations, either ShmooCon or like the Black Hat keynote last year, which had some of the analytic framework that I created for DARPA, which kind of directs how we invest your and my taxpayer money. And then also touched upon CFT. I figured I'd actually try and make it as transparent as possible and do this, shake things up a little bit in a way that would probably drive my public affairs officer back at the Pentagon absolutely crazy. And open it up to a panel of current and previous Cyber Fast Track performers. So how many folks here have heard of DARPA's Cyber Fast Track? A quick show of hands. Okay, that's about half of them. That's not bad. Yeah, some of these guys don't raise their hands. That's kind of disturbing. For those who actually haven't, you probably have been exposed to it without even realizing it. So 5 of the presentations here at DerbyCon are actually CFT-funded research. I saw in HD's awesome little presentation in his plenary talk, he was talking about Nmap 6 with all of the NSE engines. So if you've enjoyed the IPv6 capabilities that have been all of the NSE scripts that have been just churned out of Nmap, that actually came out of one of my programs called Cinder. And that we used, and I'm forever indebted to Fyodor, because we used that as an example to the government of why it's almost impossible for the government to fund small boutique organizations. Fyodor's a one-person company sort of thing on the traditional vehicles, and also to demonstrate that it's not about having the DoD or the government trying to co-opt or reach out and somehow redirect people's efforts to better suit theirs, but to find novel research that matters to us as the hacker space, the hackers, the researcher community, and actually become resources to it so that we can keep doing the cool stuff that we've been doing for so long that they've been benefiting from and make sure it doesn't go away. So I look at this as my way of kind of investing in innovation at smaller organizations and subversively changing how the government perceives what they're limited to in contracting as kind of a strategic play forward so that we don't run out of ideas, and folks like a close friend of mine who quit his research because he had to make money and took a job at a bank managing SSH keys. Luckily, folks like Dino DeZovi are actually doing research again now. And those are the sorts of risks that I really want to have the government and your my taxpayer dollar kind of like eradicate. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to spend literally like 2 or 3 slides to give a super quick recap. I'm going to tell you about where the CFT program is going to be going, because I'm 2 years into my 4-year tenure at DARPA, and folks are going, what happens to Cyber Fast Track when you leave? And the answer is somewhat scary, but I think we can figure out a way to do it. And then I'm going to open it up so that each of these organizations can give a brief summary of the projects that they've been doing, and then talk about what they liked, what they didn't like, you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly of the cyber fast track process, maybe stuff that they would recommend you don't do in it, because that's just as important to me as to, you know, not having a mismatch of folks as having, you know, you understand where it was valuable to them and where it wasn't. Oh, so in addition to the 5 cyber fast track research projects here, this last year at Black Hat and DEF CON, 20%, it was almost 20% of the performers presenting were cyber fast track performers. So that's the sort of giving back to the community that I really think we need to be doing more of. So with that said, I mean, this is the one slide some of you have probably seen before when I'm giving this talk to 3 4-star generals or the brass in the Pentagon. They all freak out because, of course, they all think hacker equals criminal, hacker equals bad guy. So let's just get that out of the way right now. We're not talking about that. To me, hacker is actually one of the coolest, greatest things we can possibly be. And I think, you know, this country has a significant resource there. So if I refer to hacking and later on somebody shoves this in front of my face, I'll have to point them back to the disclaimer I just gave right there. So one of the things that I have to do in the 8 programs that I run is I read a lot of proposals for research and development. I've read about 520 so far, so it's a good denial of service on Mudge for having to sit there and read through all of these. Now what I've noticed, that's across many programs, is about a third of those proposals, normally these are folks who are used to contracting with the government, almost always, about a third of them cite their nuggets of innovation or their secret sauce that they got in the proposal as having come from someplace like this. They saw it at a CANSIC West or a DerbyCon or a talk, and they go, that's really cool. I'm going to propose that for millions of dollars over multiple years' time to do essentially what I already saw that somebody else was able to do and prove as possible in a matter of months on a shoestring budget. So that's about a third of them, and I appreciate their honesty, at least of citing their references. Another third of them don't cite those references, but it's really obvious as to exactly where they got the ideas from and whether or not they understood the talk they were listening to at all in the first place. So I started thinking to myself when I got in, I said, this is really inefficient if that's how, you know, I'm going to spend my time at DARPA directing your and my taxpayer money. So why can't I reach out to the innovators directly and engage them in a way that's mutually beneficial so that the output of the very research they're doing feeds back into the community, or at least feeds back into their company or organization as to what they want to do. And, you know, not to so much cut out the middleman, but at least that's where the real nuggets of innovation are coming from. So as it turns out, there were 2 big reasons why this was almost impossible to do. One, the contracting process was so painful and so inappropriate for the small organizations that are really doing research, startups, ad hocs, hobbyists, sort of things, that many folks just simply could not get through the process. You can't wait 8 months, 9 months to figure out if you got won a government award. You don't have $10,000 to invest in writing a proposal that maybe sometimes is up to 300 pages just on the costing and price tag stuff and how you did that alone. Because we want to do the research. We don't have those sorts of folks around there. If we did, we'd be at different conferences. And then the second part, which to me was just as important, because I still consider myself as, you know, I mean, I came from the loft, I bled the loft, and that's still what kind of drives and defines me, is that sort of attitude and that sort of hacking, is that the government, in being insensitive or with understanding a lot of researchers' goals and morals and drivers, have been insensitive, to say the least, in how they presented certain things. And there's a level of mistrust or distrust. So many folks, including myself back then, simply will not engage in the process. And I'm not trying to get rid of that, but I'm trying to say, hey, how about I stop getting email messages from various 3-letter organizations or government entities that go, Mudge, you seem to be able to walk back and forth in, you know, hacker spaces and with different communities and then in the DoD and everything. How can we, you know, trick them to do that? Instead kind of going, yeah, you don't do that. That's going to make an adversary. Why don't we figure out where we're already mutually aligned and let's become a resource? So that was the whole setup on Cyber Fast Track. That's basically all I'm going to do on the background there. I'll cut right to the stats because folks said, yeah, But nobody's going to want to actually go through that process. Everybody does cost plus fee, and they're all used to the traditional, wait for 12 months, know exactly when the money becomes available, pitch, and then, kind of go away. So we created it, and the question is, would folks come? And it's been tremendously successful. We're pushing 300 proposals that we've received on Cyber Fast Track alone. Of those, almost everybody has been folks that the government has never engaged with before, probably never could for that first reason that I mentioned. And we've definitely found new areas of alignment where I've been able to kind of like hack the government's way of thinking such that they can become enablers rather than focused solely on the very challenging and real problems that they have as well. The 70 projects, we're actually up at about 78. You're going to see some amazing stuff coming up in this next year where don't be surprised if some cars explode, if some Mini Coopers get smashed into tractor trailers. We've got 3 programs on fully and partially homomorphic encryption. We've got satellite communications. We've got tons of stuff that's going back out open source. Some of the performers are using this. They've already done patents for their own companies. I'm looking into ways such that at the close of your particular effort, if you want to patent the stuff but maybe it's too difficult for you to do, you can recommend to the government that we go out and actually patent it and assign you the rights. So that is actually possible. We're trying to figure out how to do those sorts of things. So there are numerous reasons why, and some of those are they, to give the performers all of the rights to the work that they're doing, which is a core tenet. It's all the commercial rights. The government does not have to pay for it twice if they get an idea out of it and can use it on one of their back-end systems. That's the mutually aligned area. And ideally, ultimately, this is what I wanted back when I was running the Loft, because nobody will give you funding or fund you back when I was there or at stake to do research, because research is risk. And it's very seldom profit. So even though I ran the research group and IT and a bunch of other stuff in at stake, and the research organization was actually the only profitable part of that for the first year of the company, that's not what folks feel comfortable investing in. That's not a quote-unquote sound business model. They want you out there selling existing products. So this is supposed to take that risk out so that you can actually, in your small company, get funded to do the research. If the research fails, that's part of research we learned, but you didn't lose the money. If it's successful, that's great. It was money well spent, and hopefully you can take it, commercialize it, do whatever you want with it, and it gets out there and it betters the entire environment. For the government, the biggest bullet on this, which kind of blows their minds, is they're used to 3 months turnaround upon receiving a proposal and actually getting funding out to a performer and having them do the work. We're averaging 6 days for those 70 proposals, or for the 70 ones that we have running. And as I mentioned, with things like NMAP and the IPv6, just because it's on short time frames and it's small in the taxpayer dollars expended compared to other things, these are not small, unchallenging problems, nor are they trivial or toy solutions. So that's the little background I wanted to give you, and I'm going to tell you just a couple minutes the road forward for Cyber Fast Track, because the whole thing's an experiment. It's an experiment of can DARPA actually shake up the government on how they do contracting, or how they even approach problem solving? Is there a kind of Nash equilibrium or an economist's sort of goal here where you can say everybody benefits more if we go for the aligned areas rather than trying to realign folks to our areas from both sides? So CFT is planned on ending in about a year. So we have 1 more year run on this. That's planned. Because I want it to stand as an example. And I want folks to be able to cite it as a reference model that it can be done. And if we let it run forever and it gets redirected after I'm gone, or somebody else takes it over and decides, well, I want it to solve my problem rather than the mutually aligned areas, eventually that's what folks remember of Cyber Fast Track. And you can't go back and pick out the good parts from it because it's tainted. But if you have an example saying, look, for 2.5 years, almost 3 years, Cyber Fast Track ran, and it was able to do all those stats you just saw and make the difference, and we got great tech that everybody's using, government, private sector, private, public as well. Now you can go, we can do that for our environment. And Air Force is already engaged in picking up a lot of the programmatics on the back end and changing how they do businesses and contracting. A lot of the Navy and other areas are similarly looking at it. There is one way I will let Cyber Fast Track continue to go in its existing form, and that's if I can somehow figure out a way such that the community actually takes over and runs it. So think of something like a panel, kind of like the folks you see here, or folks from there, that are actually the ones choosing the research topics and helping direct what gets funded out of Cyber Fast Track and not, such that we continue to run it and that its direction and focus remains pure for that component of it. Real quickly, the last things here, I do want to point out, Cyber Fast Track only funds novel research. So I get a lot of things that are engineering, and there are a lot of really hard problems in engineering, but it's not really DARPA's charter to say, we can improve this from 80% accuracy to 85% accuracy, and that's the funding thing. So those oftentimes I have to not fund. So when you see things like, you'll see things like MobiSec, which folks are talking about, maybe the PowerPwn, which came out of this. You'll see some things in Metasploit framework. And you might look to yourself and say, hey, that's not really research, that's more engineering. And what you're not seeing is on the back end in the proposal that came in, there was some nugget that was teased out very nicely and very articulately that points out the challenge of the back-end coordination of multiple pen tests in something like a PowerPwn, or the 10 years of experience and the gap identified in understanding mobile security evaluation and why this particular set that they were trying to figure out for putting together for tool chains is the correct one. If you can pitch it that way, you're normally pretty golden. But without further ado there, I'm going to let each of these folks give a quick summary. If you ask them questions, which I hope you do, I only want them to really, they can answer on anything they want. They can tell you this whole thing sucks, and that's fine. I'm going to learn that too. But I get to hopefully change it. Is if you're asking questions about what the government gets out of it or why the government's doing it, they're not speaking for the government. Only I am allowed to speak for the government up here, which is one of the weirdest things I've ever said in a freaking public setting ever. I'm going to wake up at any moment and be like, oh, wow, it's weird. So if you have those, direct them to me. I'm not allowed to take the direct Q&A in a public setting because public affairs officers couldn't come, so this is terrorizing them. And without further ado, I guess that's about it. So I don't know how we're going to do the microphone. If folks want to introduce themselves real quickly and give a quick second.
There's actually wireless ones right up there you can grab.
And such that I'm not the person like asking them questions or fielding it, Relic's going to come up and actually be the moderator.
Absolutely.
So, thanks.
If you just want to go through your experiences with the CFD program and what you've done and all that good stuff.
All right. So I guess you can sort of lead me, if I'm missing stuff out from going on the sideways. My name is Mario Vuksan. I'm with Reversing Labs. Can you hear me?
It's on. You got to talk really close into it.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. My name is Mario Vuksan, and I'm with Stand Up. Wow.
All right, jumping jacks.
Only Mudge stands up. Yeah, you know. Gotta figure out how things work. This also works too? Yeah. Okay, I guess. I can go there. There you go. Okay, we'll figure it out. Some of are shorter, others are taller, so things will be fine. My name is Mario Vuksan. I'm with Reversing Labs. So our project with CFT was called the File Disinfection Framework, which is an open source library and an emulator for writing your own disinfection modules. So it was something that we were extremely passionate about and wanted to find a way to justify to ourselves that it makes sense to spend excessive amount of time in building it. Actually, we're still building it, even though it was announced at Black Hat. We've delivered our stuff and actually can give it to whoever wants it, but since we really are trying to add few more optimization features, we'll probably wait another 4 to 6 weeks before that gets implemented. We'll definitely go in more details, but in terms of the experiences with the administrative part of the CFT, we were very, very excited how quickly this all went. As a company, we tried doing another DARPA project year before, and failed along every single level that was written about before. We definitely wouldn't contemplate doing anything with DARPA if CFT didn't come along. So I guess we'll all be talking about it, and maybe best leave those questions for later.
Great. Thanks.
How's it going? My name is Phil Bune. I work for Digital Operatives, and my company worked on 2 projects. I'll be talking about PAINT, which stands for Process Attribution in Network Traffic. And we also worked on Aerial with Mike Myers, and he's going to talk more about that. So PAINT is basically attributing every single TCP and UDP traffic in your computer, the actual packet, attributing them to your local process. So there are tools that are similar to that. You got several tools and different ones, but there are no one that actually attributes at packet level for TCP and UDP packets. So we used kind of it's been exposed, but it's not well known, which is called event tracing for on Windows, where it kind of traces all network activity from TCP IP stack over to NDIS stack, or if you're doing wireless, then you have one more layer, which is wireless stack. And we basically kind of trace it all, and we kind of correlate in real time, and then we spit back out a PCAP packet and also a process data that kind of correlates with it. And it is a standalone product, but since we want it to be useful for everyone, we kind of married it to Wireshark, so that when you just run Wireshark and you hit go, you get your usual Wireshark feature, except that you also get your process ID and your process name column, so that you could easily see what's there. I'm gonna let Mike talk more about programming aspect of cyber fast track, but I mean, my experience is similar. I mean, I've been in federal business a lot more than probably most of you here, like 7 years, and it takes forever to send out proposals, and a lot of those like BAAs and things are worded in such a way that it's almost like written specific to certain contractor, or a lot of times they don't know what they're talking about. So you write it and you wait like 3 months, and you never hear back. And even when you get paid, it's like net 30, net 60, or net 90 or something like that, where it takes forever to get paid. Versus for cyber fast track, it's very, very quick. It's just a few weeks to get accepted, and get paid is less than like 10 days or something. So you don't have to float that on yourself. So that was my take.
Use this instead? Okay, I'll just stand here.
Hi, my name is Mike Myers. I'm also with Digital Operatives with Phil. And our other CFT that we can talk about is the one that he mentioned called Aerial. And it's a long acronym, but basically it stands for antenna recognition, because we designed a computer vision algorithm that can take a look at an image or live video feed and pick out the shapes of antennas, like radio broadcast antennas, and based on the shape of the antenna, give a guess as to the basic frequency that the antenna is used for. So this would be something that you could take into the field to do a site survey, and without having like expensive RF equipment, you could get an idea just based on walking around what other RF signals might be in the area. So I'm not working on that one, but I can talk more about the process for CFT. It's very favorable to people who have innovative ideas, and government contracting is not really well modeled for that. I think, in my opinion, the basic government contracting model is that the government identifies something they want to have done, and then they ask who has experience in that, and then everyone just stands up and says, I do. And they don't really have that experience, but they can BS enough of it in the proposal process that they get the award, and then they go and they find the people that can do it, and hopefully they can find them in time to do the actual work. But that's not how CFT works. In CFT, you can identify what you're good at and what you're passionate about, and actually see if that aligns with what the DARPA project manager or whoever is evaluating them, what he believes aligns well with the government's needs, and hopefully you get to work on something that you're actually good at and want to work on, which is a much better way to fund research, I think.
Hey everybody, my name's Raphael Mudge, no relation. And I'm the developer of Armitage, and probably a lot of you know if you've seen my other talks, I go to a lot of exercises. And what's interesting to me playing red in exercises is it kind of enunciates the problems we have managing our current tool sets. And I've of course worked on the collaboration problem on my own, but when I saw Cyber Fast Track, I went to Mudge and said, I've got an idea of what I think the next step of this work looks like. He's like, well, what's that? I said, well, Mudge, I've got this humans working together thing solved to a certain level. I'm really curious, because right now I rely on a lot of scripts, but what happens if I add bots to that? And how to add bots, where the line is between bots and humans, and how to do positive control of your bots. That was the DARPA bait, the research subject in my Cortana effort, which is basically a scripting language that's integrated into Armitage, but it's also standalone and can be used to write bots that work on your red team. As far as working with Cyber Fast Track, you'll probably hear everyone else say it. It's really fantastic. I used to work for the Air Force Research Lab. I was active duty. I read a lot of proposals, and I had some idea about the process. I knew enough about the process to know that no way would I ever do work for the government as a contractor. And I'm very serious about that. There's a program called Small Business Innovative Research, and you got like 1 in 12 odds, and the people who win are typically companies that professionally write SBIR proposals nonstop. And I was actually afraid to write a Cyber Fast Track proposal too, because I was thinking, no, there's no way. But take it from somebody who's been on the inside, this is truly different, and as somebody who is part of the DoD acquisitions community, I have never seen anything, no matter how much somebody's going to claim, I've never seen anything like it. It's just an amazing opportunity for us.
All right, so I'm John Seeley, and I work in a shop called RST, and I did Countersploit, which is basically flipping Metasploit upside down and seeing how it can be utilized for defenders. Kind of did that because I feel like defenders are not doing very well lately, and I was curious to explore the space. I just want to say working with Cyber Fast Track has been absolutely amazing, and I filled out a proposal before CFT started, and it was terrible. It was just a nightmare process. And you know, most of the people I work with have cool ideas, and they wish that someone would give them a chance to do something with it. You know, if you've got an idea that you're passionate about, you know, you can really take a weekend, sit down, frame it out, and send it in, and you never know. And when they say they're going to come back to you in a couple days, it's no joke. It's fast, and it's easy, and it's really great.
My name is Tony Delagrange with Secure Ideas. We've actually done 2 Cyber Fast Track projects, can't say it. The first one was MobaSec. With MobaSec, the idea Kevin and I had discussed about there was a lack of a collection of tools, or a framework, if you will, of mobile testing type of tools and an environment that you can work from. We knew there were some tools that are out there. You know, the idea wasn't to go out and develop new tools. The idea was to go out there and find these tools and put them in one place where any kind of tester or researcher that wanted to use them knows that they would work, had all the dependencies and whatnot. You know, very familiar to, similar to like Backtrack and Samurai and what have you. But it was more than that. See, we're open source bigots. We like open source projects. So the idea was when the DARPA project was over, we're going to open source this. We want this to get out into the community, not just so it's a nice, easy environment to use, but also so that we can start to get those creative juices for the researchers going and start seeing that there is a huge need for mobile testing products, mobile testing tools, and getting them out there in the open source community. So this really was kind of a launching platform to get that going. And so now we're starting to see all sorts of cool tools out there, not just because of MobaSec, but like Georgia Weidman's smartphone pen testing framework. and Jack Menino just released Goat Droid 0.9. These are the type of tools that as this project continues, we're going to get those in there. That's something we're working on right now so that it grows, it benefits the community as a whole. As far as an experience, you know, I haven't had a lot of experience with government contracts, but as many of you, I have to do my taxes every year. This is way faster than doing my taxes, and it was obviously a lot faster. Great program, easy to do, it pays more. Yes, actually kind of got me a job, actually, so can't say enough about it. Really good program.
So I'm Kevin Johnson. I'm also from Secure Ideas, and well, I hired him. Actually, I will say that the Cyber Fast Track is why he has a job. He came to me before he worked for Secure Ideas, and he said, hey, I want to work for you, and you're just some small consulting firm and can't afford people because I'm cheap. And he actually, on his own time, wrote the CFT proposal, and when it was accepted, it got accepted on a Friday, and on Monday he had an offer letter to come out to work for Secure Ideas. So it worked. He's really fond of the program. Of course, now that he's worked with me for a while, he's not so fond anymore. We also were approved for Shark, which Tony and Jason will be speaking about tomorrow here. And Shark is a framework and a series of protections to prevent or attempt to prevent HTML5 based injections against your web applications. Because, you know, look, Tom Eston and I have been talking about for years using HTML5 to attack people, and we decided to be a little bit nicer and actually help people defend against it. And the problem we find, and I think, you know, as the owner of Secure Ideas, I think I can talk about this, and I know the guys up here know it, it's very difficult for a small company to say, I want to take my billable resources, the guys who are making it possible for me to pay my mortgage, take them off of those projects and have them do something that's cool, but probably isn't going to bring us much. Might get us some attention, might get us some sales, might, you know, whatever. But that's a very difficult decision. And the CFT actually enabled us to fund those resources. And the only thing I can come up with, and I think that everybody here will relate with this idea, right? I've been trying to figure out what's the easiest way to describe how good the CFT was to work with. The guys at Bits, which are who we work with, are amazing. And what I found is that the CFT is really the DerbyCon of government consulting. I mean, it really worked that way, right? Cool. So.
Thanks for the plug, man.
What?
Thanks for the plug.
Hey, man, I had to kiss up. I'm up on your stage. So that's me.
Okay, so I think we've heard a lot of the different things that happen with the Cyber Fast Track, but to me, it all can't be roses. What were some of the things that you experienced that weren't necessarily good?
I had to work with Tony.
You had to work with Tony, so personality, right? No, but honestly, I mean, was there anything that happened during the actual Cyber Fast Track process that you would change or that you had struggles with?
Yeah, well, I can yell. Yeah, I had, the only issue I have, and I want to be very clear, it is all roses, right? You know, the process works. The guys you work with, the people you work with are amazing. The only difficulty that I had,
There goes the left one.
wow, you got another one. The only difficulty I had is, and this was very difficult for me to understand, you submit a proposal, and if it gets rejected, there's not a ton of feedback as to why. And I understand the reasoning behind that, but that really was the only negative that we experienced, was that if you got one rejected, there was no, well, how do I fix this, right?
So for me, you know, I develop a lot of stuff in the open source community, and I have a lot of ideas. So obviously, I'm taking it from your feedback right now, and you're not being paid to say this. Well, I guess you are being paid to say it. Never mind. That you would recommend this for somebody that has good ideas to go through to be able to create something.
I wouldn't recommend that you go do that. I recommend you stop attending this talk and go fill out the paper.
Recommend you stop this talk and go fill out the paper. That's good. Did you have something to say, Mudge?
Yeah.
Raphael, sorry, Mudge?
Oh, that's fine, Raphael. That's cool. One thing, and I'm used to this because I used to work for the government, but something I think that's a struggle that I've seen from others is when you're doing work for DARPA, you're not able to really talk about it until the effort's over without clearing it through their public affairs. I think it's dead. No? Okay. So that was probably the only negative for me, because I know I had reporters reaching out to me, and I wasn't able to really work with them. And for me, that's okay, but others just aren't used to that. And that's the one thing, if you're used to putting everything out there iteratively, you have to get used to that. On the flip side, I did have permission right away to recruit a small circle of people to get feedback on my work in private. It just couldn't be public with the process as I was going.
So I would say that one challenge with a CFT style program is that you have relatively rapid, you start up immediately after they basically receive the idea, so you have to be ready to do it. So in terms of staffing, if you're a small company, you have to have that resource, that person ready to go, and when they get done, they have to have something else to do. So you can't only be a CFT company, you also have to have kind of, another way to pay the bills while you're in between, or, while you're juggling your resources. I mean, that's another thing about that is that if it's a fixed price contract arrangement, so you tell them how much you think it's going to cost, and then you have to meet that cost. If you overrun and you run out of time, then you have to float it. You have to finish up on your own time. So there's a little bit of risk there that you assume in that model, but the flip side of that is that if you are more efficient than you estimated, then you get to keep the difference. So.
Just to continue down that thought, I mean, that's really the biggest issue for us, because you actually propose something you're really passionate about, you really like, you really want to do, and therefore you really care about the results, and you really want it to be excellent. Especially if you plan to open source it, you want people to look at it and say, hey, this is great stuff. This is not just proposal that took some money because we wanted to whatever, have some spare cash. And with that sort of attitude, it's so easy to go over because you really want it to be so good. I mean, the money is great, but it's so easy to spend a lot more time than it really makes sense. So it's really important to think about how else you're going to fund the company, and why this project is meaningful to you, and whether it can connect to any other directions or projects that you want to undertake, whether open source or commercial.
Now, when you looked at it and you proposed these different types of ideas, did you have the free reign to do what you wanted to do in your image of what you wanted to do, or was it difficult working with it? I mean, like for example, you have an idea that you came out with, and you have this idea of what it's going to be. Mm-hmm. Was there a lot of hands in it, or were you able to really be free with what you wanted to do and create what you wanted it to be?
In terms of a proposal, right? Right. So no, I think from our experience was that it's pretty much whatever you want goes. There are obviously directions that at least we got in terms of how you're supposed to frame it so it fits the program. And program is I think very loose, and probably Mudge should be able to talk about it more. It's there to cover a lot of things, but it does have requirements around sponsoring novel research, not incremental changes. So that's sort of very fuzzy in terms of defining what it means. We can write one sentence to sound like R&D, and the other one to sound very much incremental. So I think with some prodding can be done.
It was pretty wide open for the different ideas that we have, and we have more ideas. And this is so glad to hear this program's continuing. Probably one of the other challenges, though, is that we had to be careful with how offensive. And I don't mean offensive as like, wow, are you kidding me? Even though we are offensive, yes. How much of an offense type of a tool or product or service or whatever it is that you're trying to do some research on and produce. There is a means and ways if it is considered to be an offensive type of tool, but it has to be classified. And so there's a whole lot more rigor and a lot more steps that you got to go through for that I don't even know, because we tried staying out of that. So you have to make sure that whenever you're going to propose something, that it has a defensive side to it, that it's really kind of focused on defensive. And whatever it is that you're promoting or proposing, you really should be able to see both sides of it anyway, quite honestly. If you haven't, you probably haven't thought about it enough. But if you go towards the defensive side, it's a lot easier. If it's mostly offensive, then it's going to be classified and it's a lot more work.
Yeah, and I just want to say I feel like I was able to fully shape the idea that I wanted to work with, and I think it's kind of a testament to the fact that no one is messing around trying to push people in a direction that every performer that I've seen has had a wildly different idea, and the range of things that have been accomplished here is really surprising to me. So I really don't think there's any reason, if you have an idea you think is cool, that no one's going to come and step on it. And yeah, they might say no.
So when you came up with these ideas, was it your idea that you've had for a long time, or is it something that hey, you heard about the CFT project and you came up with something? Kevin's laughing, so he probably came up with no. I'm just kidding. I think I can talk more in the mic.
Was it my idea, or did I think of it for a long time? I'll be blunt. Some of the ideas that we've looked at submitting, or we did, were things we've talked about for a while, and some of them were specific of, hey, you know what? We're a small company, we're a growing company, and that's a nice way to fund some stuff. Let's think of something we can do. So it was a mix, and I think both work. I do want to be clear that if you're going to say, damn it, I want money from Mudge, I'm going to come up with an idea, you really need to sit down and think it through, because I'm not going to say they wouldn't approve something you just threw together and put on paper, but is that really what you want out there? Is that really what you want your tax money funding? So think it out. Like Tony said, if you can't come up with the defensive, offensive, the entire picture, you haven't thought about it enough. And one of the things that I did, because you're right, once you get started on the project, you can't really talk publicly about it, right? Before we submitted it, we made sure that we talked to friends, we talked to peers in the industry and said, hey, you know what? This is an idea we're thinking about submitting. What do you think? Shoot holes in it. And let people shoot holes in it. And I will also say that I don't know of a single performer that isn't willing to talk to other people and say, I know that here at Secure Ideas, we've actually shared with the payments removed because we're required to do that, but we've actually shared our submissions to other organizations, and I know of at least 3 other organizations that have taken our submissions, use that as a model to then build another submission, and my understanding is they've either been approved or are working on it. So
I'll just quickly add, these are operatives. I mean, all of our projects, most of it has been kind of like, in our past positions, it's like, it would be cool if we did that. And that just kind of had in our minds. And we almost have this kind of loose process. We basically have a wiki page where we have kind of a workflow of these ideas. So, some of them are like, it would be cool if we did that, versus other ones like, I've tried this, I've tried that, I've tried that, these may be the way. And once in a while, we'll kind of get together, we'll kind of bounce ideas around and develop it to the point where we think this, holds merit, we should propose this. That's when we kind of sit down and propose it.
And actually, because we sort of organically let our ideas kind of just come out, it's good that the CFT program has a rolling deadline where you can propose when you're ready and not on a 2-week time frame from the time that the government says they have money, which is how a lot of the other proposals are run. That allows you time to really flesh out the idea and, like you said, shoot some holes in it, maybe get some other opinions, and really do some due diligence on your concept. And that's what we do. We have a lot of ideas that are in infancy, and then we have ideas that are closer to something that we're ready to say, hey, let's try this. And so that's our idea process, I guess.
All right, quick 2-minute question here, real quick. Obviously, this is an experiment. So this is a 4-year experiment, right? What do you think the government's getting out of this, and do you think that they'll continue on, or what do they need to know to keep it going? Because I think there's a lot of benefit in the information security community. Do you think the government will continue on with that path and continue to progress it?
From what I hear, it's very well received. So I think it will continue on, no matter whether it continues on with the same name or if it becomes something else. People will probably take ideas from it. The idea that you should remove some of the obstacles in the proposal process and take away some of the process that favors the insiders or the experts, people that are always doing proposals. Let the ideas come from the ground roots effort, bottom-up idea generation rather than top-down. Maybe the short turnaround with small fixed cost funding, maybe that'll get picked up. I'm not on the government side, but these are things that I think that other government entities have seen and liked.
Sure.
Okay, kind of just digging back to my old days. The government, believe it or not, even as difficult as it makes it, really does want to give money to small businesses. And for politicians, it sounds really, really good when small innovators, like when they have those stories to say, hey, look at how we've enabled this dream to happen, okay? And something that's really cool about DARPA is DARPA's mission is to help the United States avoid strategic surprise. Meaning, if there's going to be a revolutionary technology, DARPA wants it to happen in the United States first. They want this to be the bed of it. And Cyber Fast Track's really interesting because DARPA's not going to take Cortana necessarily and go turn it around and do something with it, or they might. But they, by seeding all these different programs and these crazy ideas, they're kind of creating this mix that will allow maybe the next big thing to come out. Because you've got, if you're funding 100 innovators, just people who are just going to pursue something with a lot of passion, chances are something really big is going to come out of that. Something, maybe not all of them, but something. And that's worth every dime spent. And compared to other government programs, Fast Track's really cheap. So it's a good deal for the government.
All right, great. So if I could have the Bit Systems folks stand up somewhere in the audience. Oh, to the left, thanks. I think we're going to go ahead and field some questions from the audience and answer any questions they might have about the Cyber Fast Track program.
How much of your time is spent hacking versus reporting? Because I know there's a reporting aspect of each one of the fast tracks, and that's like the part that I totally fear, and I'm like, I just want to hack. So, I mean, what's the percentage for each one?
It's really not that bad. Although I like to write as much as I like to code, so it doesn't bother me much. But the way we structured our CFTs is we wanted to have incremental capability delivered. We want to keep ourselves on target too. So we did a monthly deliverable where we travel up to Bits, and Bits is the one that manages the contract. And we generally try to keep the reports down to a few pages, and the pages are basically write themselves because we just have, we tried this are the results, here's how to repeat a test, and here's any caveats we have, here's the references for the research. And you do that every month, and by the end, you basically have a report. You're not really required to deliver a final report, but I feel like it really kind of wraps things up if you're doing some research to have kind of like, to put it all together at the end. But that it really is, however you structure your milestones and however you want to do your work. So you may deliver only code and just, whatever minimal test instructions they need to show that you did your, you accomplished what you set out to do. Which, they probably appreciate that because they don't want to read reports either. So.
Yeah, and that's what I did, right? All my deliverables and my milestones were just tarballs with code that just had a little text file in there, like, here's what this milestone was, here's how you do it in my project. Let me know if something doesn't work. And it was easy.
Just add that same thing. I had no report. My final deliverable, I walk in, say, here's final thing. You're like, okay, see you. And I gave them a hug. So I was going to miss them. There's no requirement. I mean, treat it like, if you're going to open source it, treat it like you're making a good piece of open source that you're just quiet about until you're right at the end of your contract. So, very easy.
Any other questions?
But assume they're going to definitely look at the deliverable. I mean, it's going to get tested. You're going to get call likely. Is this what you meant? That it should be doing. So it's again down the open source route. You want to have something that somebody else will pick up, understand, be able to replicate, compile, test, and you want that to be the quality product, and that's really all that matters in the end.
And you need to think about that when you're doing the proposal, what that end product and those end deliverables that you're defining are. You need to think about what they are when you're doing that proposal, so, because that's what they're going to be expecting. So definitely think about that at the time you're doing the proposal.
I just wanted to ask, did any of your projects involve any sort of capital expenses for equipment or hardware that was needed for your projects? And if so, how did that side of the process work?
I know they have it.
Yeah, I didn't actually do it, but I think that there's actually a program in place, and somebody jump and tackle me if I'm saying the wrong thing, but where if there's gear that you need and the government has it, they'll help you get it without you necessarily having to go purchase some really big box or something like that.
Yeah, actually, wow, that's really loud. So I think you guys can either talk to Mudge or, okay, now it's, or Bit Systems, but I had one instance where I needed about 5 or 6 laptops just to kind of test my thing within my little network, and I just went over to Bits and just borrowed 6 laptops. That was no problem, but but we never had to actually have any large capital expenditure. But my understanding, and I could be wrong, is that that is part of your proposal, saying that this is gonna take me this much, but I'm gonna need this huge thing, and that will get approved if it was appropriate.
Just but I don't think you get to keep the hardware.
So you have to give it back.
I haven't returned my laptops yet, but yeah, I'll have to.
I need the new iPhone, right?
Were there any non-monetary resources that DARPA was able to provide for you and help, in the successful execution of your project? For instance, access to various knowledge management systems, or like forums with some of the best and brightest researchers, because you're not allowed to talk in the open about this. I would imagine that they have communications networks which are not open, to the various engineers that they fund in this type of thing. Was any of that available to you, and in those ways, or any other non-monetary resources? Thank you.
We didn't need to draw on any DARPA experience or anything. They actually don't help you with your research. You're pretty much on your own. They may be able to introduce you to other people, but the CFT performers don't. They don't talk to each other. They're basically everyone's doing their own thing. And then once you've finished and you've had their approval to talk about what you did, then you can make your work public. At which point you can collaborate with other people. No. The resources from DARPA, I think, are limited to the money they pay you and any equipment that you can borrow from their inventory.
With regards to that, I agree that they don't. Let me rephrase that. I don't know of any conspiracy-laden underground smart researcher forum that they would connect me to. But while you're not supposed to talk about it publicly, they will approve you bringing in people, and they'll introduce you to people that would be good testers and feedback and stuff like that. And I will say, I don't know about you, but Squirrel, for me, the biggest thing that they provided was a deadline, right? When we built our milestones and we said, hey, I don't know, make up a date, right? The 3rd of October, we're going to deliver this. That actually forced the action, instead of the research we do normally that's just kind of out there when I'm bored and can't sleep at night. That was one of the biggest benefits to me that they provided.
One thing I'll say is when I had my kickoff meeting with the Bit Systems folks, I got the impression if I asked them to, they were kind of willing to bend over backwards for the performers. And they asked, like, how can we help you? We've got this massive server. We can host all these VMs for scale testing. We're willing to host a Git or SVN repository. And I thought that was really cool. And I personally didn't need to take advantage of any of that because the model here is DARPA. It is a DARPA effort. It's a DARPA contract. But think of them as an angel for your effort, as if advocacy as well. But I'll let someone else. So that's an answer to that question.
Great, thanks everybody. I'd like to turn it back over to Mudge.
Thanks. I appreciate everybody sitting through. I figure this is the first way that we can actually start opening it up. And in closing, I just wanted to mention a couple of things, since I'm not answering any of the questions I heard, because that would be wrong. But I was meaning to talk about some of these things that I forgot in the first place. We've got a spreadsheet on the website that has $900,000 worth of equipment on it that I've scavenged from other programs that was just sitting out at contractors and other places not being used. So you can request anything off that, and we'll just ship it out to you. And if you have like maybe expensive stuff, like if you heard earlier, we might be exploding some cars or other things like that. Those folks actually, we didn't have cars sitting around. So that was something called other direct costs. So, we go ahead and put the money out there and give it to you up front so that you can buy it, so that you don't have to float the money if it's something needed. I'm really sympathetic to the not talking in the public area there. And that's something that I haven't been able to figure out a good way around it. What it is they don't want press releases and they don't want like media stuff to catch them by surprise. There's nothing that I have not been able to approve through the process, but the process is not as fast as Cyber Fast Track. And so far, we've worked it out such that as soon as the project's over, it's yours. So who could stop you from talking about it, sort of thing. If folks have a novel solution or idea to solve that, let me know. I'm all ears. And then in closing, I just wanted to say one thing. Since it really does currently only have one more year left to try and help folks in any proposals you're thinking about doing, if you're trying to solve a DoD-specific problem, don't submit it to Cyber Fast Track. Chances are I won't fund it under that. Solve a problem that matters to your environment and contributes back to what you're interested in, and I'll see the passion in that, I'll see the expertise in that, and that's the sort of stuff that Cyber Fast Track is funding. Doesn't mean that DARPA doesn't fund things that are directly related to DoD interests and DoD problems, but those are different projects. So thank you very much, everybody, and have a great DerbyCon.
And just a heads up, if you have any questions about the Cyber Fast Track initiative, the bit system guys will be here all con, so they're all right over here. Feel free to go talk to them and grab some information from them. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.